Hey, Will Brink here, www.optimalswat.com and www.brinkzone.com. And today we're going to talk about the Tuff-Writer pen, or Tuff-Writer defense pen, or I hate to say Tuff-Writer tactical pen. But let's get right to this review and let me know what you think. Now, the first thing I wanted to do with this review of the Tuff-Writer pen was to put out a few other pens, because I think one of the mistakes people make when they review these products is not to look at them as a writing instrument. And at the end of the day, if you own such a pen, writing is what you're going to be doing with it 99.9% of the time, as opposed to what you may end up having to use it for its other use. And as you can see, I like nice writing instruments. This is a Mont Blanc I have, and this is another Mont Blanc, a considerably more expensive Mont Blanc, and this is a Tombow, and here you have the Tuff-Writer pen, which also gives you some idea of scale and visual. Now, just as a writing instrument, I really like this thing. It's actually become sort of my go-to pen that I just put in my pocket or bring with me. It's, as you'd expect, very well built. It is considerably overbuilt, built more or less like a tank in pen form. It uses the Fisher cartridge, which is from the Fisher Space Pen, as they call it, which is under pressure and allows you to write pretty much under all conditions, which is upside down. Supposedly the ink is specially formulated to write in pretty much any condition temperature-wise you might find yourself, which of course, if you're somebody who works outdoors in various temperatures, could matter. I've had a few frozen pens in my day. So as a straight-up writing instrument, the weight, the shape of it, the cartridge is actually very nice. So as a pen itself, and in the price range, if you're just talking about nice writing instruments, I have to say, again, it's going to cost you considerably less than the Mont Blancs. It's going to cost you a little bit more than the Tombow pen, and is it just a very nice writing instrument from that perspective. So beyond that, let's get to its other possible use. These pens, quote unquote defense pens, tactical pens, whatever, are all the rage these days. And, you know, maybe rightly so. What I will say is that I am not a combatives expert, and so I'm not going to play one on YouTube. What I will say is I did discuss at length with some people that are, who work in the civilian arena, the law enforcement arena, military arena, and I got a number of feedback from them. And the opinion of such a thing was fairly consistent, and that is that it is a potentially useful tool in the toolbox of defensive tools. There are some pros and there are, of course, some cons. I mean, one of the obvious pros is this may be the only thing you have with you in a non-permissible environment. It, of course, or may be the only thing you have in your hand at the time. It is something, of course, as they say, can be hidden in the open because it's a pen and you're just walking around with a pen in your hand. So, you know, there are some obvious advantages to, or should I say some obvious pros to something like this. Some people will comment, well, you know, I can do the same thing with any pen, and yeah, you probably can do the same thing with any pen, but I gotta say this thing is very stoutly built. As you can see, it has a rather severe point on the end of it, and I can tell you, and there are videos, you could take a hammer and drive this thing right through this table, and you could probably put this through you could punch this thing through a car door, which you wouldn't want to do, but you could certainly shatter a glass, you could shatter window glass with it and such. So, you know, there's definitely a step above in the build quality of something like this to your standard pens, and that may be an advantage. Now, what was pointed out to me very specifically was this is a last-ditch weapon of last resort. That is, no one's going to give up their defensive weapons, their guns, their firearms, or what have you for a pointed pen. End of story. So people need to realize that. You're talking about something that may allow you to quickly get you some distance and to run like hell after surprising somebody with something like this, so on, so forth. Or give you some distance to transition to something a heck of a lot more effective than a well-built pen. And people need to realize this. This is by no means a standalone defensive weapon. Now, having said that, in the right hands, with the person with the right skill set, there is no doubt you could do an awful lot of damage to somebody with something like this. Anything, pepper spray, firearms, what happens is you buy something like this, you drop it in your pocket, and you expect it to ward off evil all by itself. And at the end of the day, if you do not have any training, any skill set to use to deploy such a thing, then it's really not going to be, it's just an expensive, heavy pen, and it's not going to do you probably a whole lot of good. Again, it doesn't mean you couldn't surprise somebody with it, but the problem with this, as with most weapons, is people buy such a thing, it looks cool, you put it in your pocket, and that's that. So that's an important aspect of such a thing. For law enforcement, for example, obviously there's a lot of times when the only thing you have in your hand is a pen, and this may be an effective option, again, to, if you're surprised, to transition, to give you some space to transition to something else. But of course, different departments have different policies as to use of force, and I wouldn't want to recommend this wholesale to anybody in law enforcement. We'll say back to the writing instrument part. If you're out in the cold and you're wearing gloves, again, this really is a great pen in terms of being able to write because of the knurling on it and the weight of it. And again, that might just be a practical matter and have nothing to do with defensive uses at all. So I certainly personally give this product a thumbs up. It's very well made, and I really like it, and I have to say it is probably, just as a pen, my favorite pen. Another thing I like about this particular product is that it looks like a pen. You see a lot of these defense pens, tactical pens, whatever you want to call them, that look like 5 pounds of knurled Kubotan, and that sort of defeats the purpose. I mean, the whole idea to me is, you stick this in your pocket up to here, and it looks like a pen. It just looks like a good old-fashioned pen. And in use, like so, it still looks like a pen. And I think that is in many respects the strength of this design, because if it doesn't look like a pen and it looks like something else, like a weapon, well, then you sort of you're sort of missing the point of what I think the design or the use of such a thing brings to the table. So that was one thing I really like about it. And I'm not going to say I've gone out and tested every one of these things out there, but from my research and my gathering, this thing is probably the most rugged of them out there. And yeah, you're going to pay a little more money for it for sure, but I will tell you, like I say, there are videos of it literally being driven through 2x4s and such with under pressure, and being no worse for wear, being perfectly serviceable after that. So it is one hell of a tough overbuilt pen, and will probably serve its purpose as both a writing instrument under any condition and as a possible defensive tool under certain conditions, exactly as intended. And for that, I have to say it's something I like, and I hope this review is of interest to you. And feel free to leave some comments for me on my underneath the video, and I'll see you all on Optimal SWAT.